Welcome to the Women on the Wall Communication Team Conference Call. I want to welcome everyone back, and I'm excited. Tonight's call is we had a teaser 2 weeks ago when we had Lynne Taylor on the call from Nebraska. We ended the call talking about innovation, and from state after state, what we are seeing is this term innovation and things like districts of innovation or innovation zones. And so I have asked Lynne Taylor to come back on tonight, and we are going to dive into that issue and kind of the root of where this is coming from. And so I want to start out tonight and welcome Lynne Taylor. And Lynne, are you there?
I am, Alice, but I'd like to know one thing before we get started. When did I move to Nebraska?
Did I say Nebraska? I don't know what I'm saying.
It's okay. I just thought I would have a little fun with you. No, it's fine. No, I'm from
North Carolina.
Everybody knows. No, I was going to say, wow, I knew I would move. Wow, I didn't know I had already. Anyway, no, I'm doing fine. I hope you are, and I hope your travels have gone well. I understand that morass has not been totally confirmed. Is that true?
That is true, and
cool.
It could come up tomorrow for a vote. That nominations committee is scheduled to meet again tomorrow, so it could be voted on as early as tomorrow, but I do know that, and I encourage anyone on this call, I know we've had a lot of people calling our senators on that nominations committee, but if you're from Texas and you're on this call, even if you've called tomorrow morning, first thing tomorrow morning, call that nominations committee and tell them no more morass, that we are ready to vote no on that. And so, and you know, it's interesting, Lynne, because when we dive into this tonight, I truly believe that these young people like morass, these 30-something-year-olds who have been groomed for these type of positions are, I just think that I don't think they're green. When you look at that color system that we've talked about, the green, yellow, and red, right. I don't think they're green, but I don't think they're red. I think they're pawns. I think they're yellow. I think they're making a lot of money off of being in these positions, and I think that they're yes men, and they don't know enough to have, or either they're complicit and they do know the bigger picture of what's going on and what we'll kind of tackle tonight, or I also think that there's people who have gotten into this and this is their job, and even when you put the truth in front of them, pride and they can't get out.
Right, yeah.
They don't know how to get out.
Yeah, they box themselves into a corner, absolutely. And I think you're right, but let's just go ahead and I'm going to just jump in the middle and we'll take it from there. How's that?
That sounds great. And I do want to say, you're from North Carolina, and I do know that, but that just tells you I am exhausted. So
It's all right. It's all right. Like I said, I just want to have a little bit of fun because what we're about to talk about is just so twisted as it seems like, these really tough subjects we get into. It's like, by the end of the call, people are just like scared to death, and I hate that, but it's all good because we need to know about this stuff. We need to be scared because if we're scared, we're going to spring into action and we're going to do something to help our kids. And so, let's just dive in. So probably the roots in the innovation, I can trace them back to not only the United Nations global push for this sustainability, because after all, we have to all be on the same page, and you can't have a globe worth of citizens be on the same page if you don't have some sort of way to communicate. You can also trace the roots of the innovation back to the 60s. It was used in Japan. It's called a theory Z. And there are also theories called X and Y out there as well. And you can find studies on these theories. And what it is basically, Alice, is that you're taking education, again, one more time, from a business standpoint, not just an educational standpoint. And so how that has transformed into America in the 2000s is that we have the digital push. And the teaser that I left everybody off with 2 weeks ago was that there were these two bills in back-to-back Senate sessions, congressional sessions, that when Obama was a senator, he introduced. And they were all about the digital technology innovation districts, and the money was supposed to be able to be in grant form given to your local education agencies to help, beef up the technology in your district or your school. Now, the interesting thing is that these bills they were read, and then they went into the HELP committee. And then, lo and behold, who's, over the HELP committee but Lamar Alexander, who is one of the masterminds behind the Every Student Succeeds Act, Lamar Alexander. And it's interesting, and I cannot remember the exact page, but it was in one of my articles that deals with this particular thing about the school boards. It tells you that what page it was where almost verbatim the Senate bill that had been introduced all those years ago was suddenly in this reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. It's now called Every Student Succeeds Act. So, that was the teaser I left everybody with. And then from there, what we can see on our local school boards is that, they're being pushed 90-0, whether it's Every Student Succeeds Act or it is their state legislative body, to have a digital device of some sort in every student's hand by X date, okay? Now, if you look at the mandates that are in Every Student Succeeds Act, you have over $849 million set aside to be divvied up, and so the states can compete against each other one more time, where have we seen this before, over digital technology upgrades, and a bunch of it's going to come in through what I call a back door, and that is your infrastructure. And what I mean by that, Alice, is we know we live in cities that almost everybody has a computer. Everybody has, a phone. Everybody has ways that they need to stay connected to the Internet, through your library, through your museum, through your school, through your office, you name it. You have to be hooked in to all this smart technology. That's your infrastructure. Case in point, we've talked about this before. In Charlotte, North Carolina, not 30 miles from where I live, they just completed a Google infrastructure project where everyone in the city was going to have the fastest Internet, the fastest this, the fastest that. And I have studied this to know this hooks back into the UN's Smart City. I think over here in America, let's see, it is called the Smart City, but then there's another name to it that was handed down through the previous administration from a presidential initiative. So basically what we're doing is we're seeing our cities gear up to be all these smart hubs, which means we're bringing in districts of innovation, we're bringing in smart cities, we're beefing up our infrastructure for digital and technology upgrades, because as ESSA says, there is no excuse for any child to not be denied access 24/7, 365 to Internet educational resources. I know that was a lot of stuff in a short amount of time, but that's basically how some of this stuff interconnects. And another way that it also interconnects is back in 2014, I did this article on what's called the GSV, the Global Silicon Valley. And there is a huge document, and Crystal Swayze has just published another article about this particular document. But buried in the document, and I know we've talked about this before, in these 20-some-odd steps, right in the middle is eliminate your school boards. And this has to do with, because we have to all be innovative, we all have to be on the same page. And the global Silicon Valley is also hooked into lots of global education and business groups. So you can also tie it in through the Technocratic Party as well, because one of their main goals is to have America become an economic boom nation again, if you will, through technology and through innovation and through digital stuff. Now, the scary part about the Technocratic Party, Alice, is that they have big socialism roots.
You know, it's interesting because when you've done the research that you've done and you see, and then there's people like me who follow and are on the ground and seeing, we've talked about before how there is federal and state legislation that marries up, and it's designed to lock in place the system like a set of gears. And so when things are happening and you see bills, and I'll give you a perfect example, in Texas just last week, or 2 weeks ago, Senator Larry Taylor put forth this bill here in Texas, Senate Bill 22. And when I saw that bill, I instantly knew that it was tied in to all of this. And it's this idea of restructuring the high school experience. And it's through grant money. And it's just like you're saying, they're setting up, they're using the same exact business model, they're using the same exact tactics that they used to get Common Core into 46 states. Texas didn't need to because we were already implementing the plan, but you can see how these bills are setting in place this whole system. And one of the things that I want to point out, because I think that you've done a very good job, Lynn, of staying focused on the fact that there is this, in your articles you call it the CCSS machine, the Common Core State Standards machine. That's what this is. Am I correct on that? It is this big system. It's this big vision, and all of these parts are coming in to lock it in place. Am I correct in stating that?
Yes, you exactly are. And here's one thing we need to understand. It is not an American-made machine. This is plain and simple. It is not. It is a globally made machine. Now, I want to make one statement that is probably going to set a lot of people off, and if it does, oh well. When I said about the Technocratic Party wanting to make America an economic boom nation again through technology and digital and that sort of thing, their main vehicle to do this, with its socialistic roots and everything, is what has been coined as STEM, which is short for science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, I've had my chops busted over this several times, and I just want to go on record to say I've done the research. Yes, we've always had science. Yes, we've always had math. You know, we've had engineering for quite a long time. Technology is kind of the new kid on the block. But my point is that particular acronym, if you will, was not always around. It is a product, a marketing tool created by the National Science Foundation, which is a U.S. government-funded, non-government office, and it has huge ties into the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And the reason that they decided to make this a marketing tool was because if they polished it up, if they slicked it up, if they made it sound neat and cool, it could be this wonderful thing that was snuck into education that no one would ever find out, and they would dovetail it on the release of the Common Core. Now, I'm not just making this up. This is in a published report that was given to President Obama early in his administration from the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. And I've written an article about it. I've shared it several times, and people have just been blown away with, oh, my goodness, because they did not ever put two and two together. But we've heard in this report, it said we want to be a STEM nation with a STEM citizenship for STEM jobs for a STEM economy. And, Alice, what are we seeing?
That's it. That is it. And when you look at this bill, the Senate Bill 22, it came out. Larry Taylor put it forth in the Education Committee the same day that the Texas Education Agency announced this grant program, and it's, listen to this, it's a System of Great Schools Technical Assistance Network. And it's through these grants that these school districts can be a part of this system, and the system is to support educators to design and lead high-quality schools, empower families in high-quality options, and focus central office on high-leverage oversight, innovation, and support. So as they're restructuring from state to state, the education agencies, if you will, that to me, when I look at a person like Mike Morath and a deputy of governance, this guy that he has, A.J. Crable, they have absolutely no background in education. And while they may be, talking a good talk, as they're talking the good talk, they're implementing this system, and they are systems people. And when you have a governor that is pushing pre-K, universal pre-K, and then these technology high school academies, it's all a part of this system.
Right.
Am I crazy?
No, but who are the people giving the grant? Are they taxpayer funds? I mean, where's money coming from?
It's coming in through the appropriations office, through appropriations.
Oh, okay, all righty. Yeah, we see where this is going. Well, here's something really interesting. I know I started off and I said, back in the 60s, this theory X, Y, and Z was used in Japan, and it was all about informing education to business ends, not just education. How that plays out in real time is here in North Carolina, for example. We have what's called a common follow-up system, and this happens anytime any student gets into the public school system, okay? Now, we could do that when Johnny and Susie gets into preschool or kindergarten, but we can also do it when Johnny and Susie are homeschooled and they now join into what's called the North Carolina Virtual Public School Academy. Anytime you enter into a public education system in this state, you are assigned what's called a unique identifier number, and it tracks you throughout your education career, whether it is long-term or whether it's short-term, until you get a job, and it continues to follow you. Now, Alice, where have we heard something like this before? The Student Lifecycle Data System and the Workforce Quality Data Initiative. So you've got all these data streams that are coming in, which is another push for why all your school districts need to have the neatest, fastest, internet available. But also think about it from this way. You've got state legislators who are not only revamping high school, but you've got state after state who is now taking it to the other end and lowering the age of when your little ones start. Right. Yeah.
It truly is that P20W.
Oh, yeah, it is. And our lieutenant governor was just in your state, and, he was helping back one bill, and I don't even know what bill it is. But meanwhile, he's over here really promoting what's called this Bright Futures Act. And the main component of this Bright Futures Act is that we have to have everybody as hooked to an internet system as they possibly can be for student outcome, for brighter futures, and I don't remember who it was who said it, but anytime you have a bill that has this wonderful sounding name to it, expect the exact opposite.
That's right. It's interesting because we were in a debate the other day, Ginger Russell and I, over the ESSAs, the Education Savings Accounts. And the interesting thing, when Peggy Venable she used to be with Americans for Prosperity, now she's with Texas Public Policy Foundation, in this nonprofit organization that's pushing all this school choice. She described it as a personalized individual learning where it's almost like Amazon, like the parents can go on Amazon and pick the education programs that they want for their child, and making it sound like, oh, this is all in the parents' hands to pick this personalized education. That is exactly what we're talking about. This is this online personalized competency-based learning. That's what this whole school choice push is. And so we see it here where it's coming into our traditional public schools through these trade organizations that have access to the public school students, like TASA and the Texas Association of School Administrators, and their new vision. The end goal is this online competency-based personalized learning. But and then you've got the other side, if you will, who are the school choice people, the Peggy Venables of the world, the Heritage, all of those folks. They want personalized individual learning as well. It's this huge global industry. That's exactly what you're talking about. It's this global industry where it is taking that concept of a local community school where you've got teachers in a classroom who are teaching and giving instruction. All that eventually will go away. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No, you're not. I mean, we've already seen in some institutions, educational institutions, I should say, where teachers are not teaching, they're facilitating, or they're being group leaders. Now, let me just say this, and again, this may set some people off, but oh well. Personalized learning is a farce. It is a code name for digital manipulation is what it is, okay? If you truly want to personalize a child's education, you do not do it through a computer. You do it through looking that child in the face, being hands-on, and being right there in the dirt with them as they discover, that water and dirt makes mud. That's a personalized learning moment. That is not capable of happening on a computer. It just cannot be done because you cannot have a computer replicate human emotions or human intelligence. It can try to come close, and, there are times I know we all feel like our computers and our smartphones are smarter than we are, but don't give it a minute's thought when you hear personalized learning. It is just absolutely code for how much data can I harvest off your child? How smart can I make them feel because I'm constantly readjusting my program so that your kid sounds like they really are mastering something, when if you were to stack them up against a child from another era who had the same type of was the same age, would probably be able to master many more things. And why? Because if you look at from another decade, the way that they were educated is hands down superior to the way we're educating today. And I don't say that because I don't like teachers. I think teachers are fabulous. I think they're getting a horrible, horrible deal through this aligned workforce-based stuff. But let's remember that ESSA is going to hold our teachers to, are you teaching every grade level to post-secondary readiness, not laid out by an education law, but laid out by a workforce innovation and opportunity industry-recognized credentialing standard. Now, that's got to be just the biggest slap in the face for our teachers. You also are going to have your schools graded across the board on how well everyone is achieving on those personalized learning plans, which are, of course, digital and technology rich. You're going to have all kinds of things happen when those school grades don't measure up, because then the state is going to be able to come in and, oh, goodness, this school's not performing. It got a C or a D on my report card. I need to turn this school into a charter school. That's what's going to happen. And how do I know that? Because if your state is like mine, it's already put into the works. The lowest performing schools will be taken over by charter management companies. And if you look at the bevy of charter school management companies out there, they are tied up in this Common Core machine 6 ways to Sunday.
And one of those companies, I know that you've written about them extensively. I know I've seen them. I know that they are here in Texas in a big way. And I want you to talk about them a little bit, is this advanced ed. Because it's not just the standards that are the problem. It is the accreditation for these private companies. And correct me if I'm wrong, if we pass legislation at a state level and at a federal level for education savings accounts or these scholarships, and you are given a vendor list, that vendor list goes through the accreditation process. Am I correct on that? And can you talk a little bit about advanced ed?
Okay. Real quick, before I talk about advanced ed, I wanted to give you a real-time example of just how encroaching this digital push is, okay? Now, yes, I've mentioned the previous administration on this particular subject many, many times. Our town, Mooresville, North Carolina, was visited by the President of the United States one day, and it was all in relation to the digital classroom. Now, he was here because our school district had become such a model of innovation, okay? The whole nation had to become just like this system of innovation. But what you don't know is that the superintendent over the school system who put this wonderful plan into motion had been hand-picked and hand-groomed by Pearson Publishing to come into our small school district to turn it on its head to become this wonderful model that our president could hold up and go, see, we need every school to be just like this one. Now, let that sink in for just a little bit, okay? Mm-hmm. And while you let that sink in, then I'm going to talk about advanced ed. Now, advanced ed, as you said, Alice, is an accreditation company. They don't just accredit charter schools. They accredit anybody who wants to be accredited by them. And what I mean by that is they have educational services, they have corporations, and they have school districts, individual schools. Anybody who is somehow connected with education, they can accredit you. Now, where the danger with advanced is as you said, it's not just, now remind me what you said. It's not just what, but what?
I am not sure how I phrased that.
I know, I was going to totally address it, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I know you said exactly it wasn't this, but it wasn't that. Oh, it was not just about the accreditation. It was also about...
it's not about the standards. It's about the accreditation.
No, they have their own standards of which your school or your school district must measure up to, and these are a global set of what they're calling standards. Now, if you're going to sit here and say, okay, this is a global education standard, no, this is global in the sense of you're going to be on our team, you're going to pay us money, and in exchange for that, here's how we expect you to adhere to what we want you to run your school like. Okay? Does that make any sense?
And let me point out, advanced ed, it's not only for public schools and charter schools. My child went to a private school, one of the top Christian private schools in North Texas, and they were accredited through the Southern Association of Colleges and School Councils and through advanced ed. So people have to understand that even if these private schools don't take the money, they're still getting roped into this system through the accreditation. We have the conservatives all over Texas are pushing these liberty charter schools and saying, but they're conservative and they're Christian and they're classical. The problem is they are accredited through advanced ed. So it ropes them into this system. Is that correct?
It's not advanced, and you're right. And if it's not advanced ed, it's going to be another one just like them. And, that's the thing. Mm-hmm. Christian schools use some of the same national normed assessments. So if they're not maybe teaching the Common Core curriculum, which, I would really, really want to see what they're teaching, because more and more are doing so and not realizing it, but they have the same nationally normed assessments. They use the same management companies. And here's the thing. Why are our school districts falling for the thing of we have to have some big wig company come in that we pay to manage us? If your school board is not managing your school system, why are they in office?
Right.
You should have a school. Well, this is the thing. Look at your state law of what their duties and responsibilities are, and it is they are to manage everything. They're not necessarily supposed to pay out and have someone micromanage, but that's what we're seeing happen, and this is one of the dangers, and this is one of the ways that these groups like the technocrats and the global Silicon Valley people are succeeding in not eliminating school boards right this second. They're going to get there. But look how far they've come. Mm-hmm. They've infiltrated the way the schools are run, and now they're micromanaging. And now you have laws like Every Student Succeeds that allows even more of this intrusion through public-private partnerships, community alignment, and now micromanaging systems.
That's exactly right. And we see it. I see it in our own local school board in coordination with our superintendent. They are bringing in these consultants and programs and spending so much money to do it, and it's all to align with this.
Go ahead.
I want to ask this question because I think that this is something, as we see state after state set up these districts of innovation or innovation zones, one of the things that the school districts are saying is it allows them to go around the laws, the education code, and be more like charters so they can, and they say so we can be innovative. My question is, as all these school districts are buying into it, kind of like all the states bought into the Common Core before the standards had even been written. Correct me if I'm wrong or tell me I'm crazy. I don't mind. And I want to be wrong. But we have this push to get rid of the test, and what is coming in next, this next generation of assessments and accountability, no one really knows what that is. They haven't been written yet. And so all these people all these school districts are buying into, we've got to be a district of innovation, but nobody knows what the actual assessments and accountability of the next generation are going to be. And I know that the commission that was put in place, their number one recommendation to the Texas legislature for the next generation of assessments and accountability is online digital learning, personalized learning, assessment, and instruction. Am I seeing the same tactic of they're getting everyone to buy into it before we even know what the assessments and accountability are going to be?
I think to a large degree you are absolutely spot on, but here's the question. Who are these people who are driving the conversation, and why are not more people firing back with the truth that we've seen thus far, and that is not once, but not twice, but now 3 times we've had federal legislation that has eked down to the state legislation that before anybody really knew, excuse my French, what the hell was in the language, they went ahead and passed it. And now we have to play catch up and find out, oh, well, that's what was in it, and that's what this means. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen with this next generation stuff.
I think you're right. Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out one thing. People are talking about, oh, we got to jump on the charter school bandwagon. Okay, let's please remember one thing, and that is, if your state has not already built in charter school legislation, they will be, because in order to get some of the federal funding that will be available through the Every Student Succeeds Act, you won't have a choice but to create charter schools, because they're going to be increased. You're not going to have a choice in, does my community get to escape a 21st century community learning center or a community school, or is it going to have a promised neighborhood? Because every one of these things that are tied back to your innovation are codified in one way or mandated in another. But charter schools, and I'm going to use North Carolina as an example, when we decided to have charter schools in our state, we had to have all kinds of legislation put into place. Now, I'm going to read you one of the statutes that surrounds making the advisory board, okay? It's going to say, it authorizes a system of charter schools to provide opportunities for teachers, parents, pupils, and community members to establish and maintain schools that are, now brace yourselves, operate independently of existing schools. Now, I'm going to say that phrase again, independent of existing schools. Now, if this is true, Alice, and I'm going to ask you to say if I'm crazy or not, if this is true, that these schools are going to be independent of existing schools, why do we see these same pro-Common Core backing state legislative groups involved? And let me point out what I'm saying. Department of Public Instruction is who houses the North Carolina Charter School Office. Okay, if I'm supposed to be independent of an existing school, why in blue blazes am I housed under the very powerhouse group or department that is the existing school?
Yep.
The State Board of Education, again, another powerhouse group sold out to Common Core and all the other junk that goes with it. But yet these are the same groups that are overseeing our charter schools. And then they go on to, in this particular article, it goes on to tell you, how this particular advisory board is set up. The members are appointed. Now, Alice, I know a lot of people understand the difference between appointments and elections, but the more charter schools you have, the more appointed people you will have serving to represent them. And guess what? Election of qualified, concerned citizens comes to a grinding halt.
Well, and you're right. And what we see over and over and over is this language in legislation. I'm thinking in Texas, this House Bill 1842 that was passed in the last legislative session gives so much power over the charter schools, over the whole system to an unelected appointed commissioner of education.
Right.
And that's where we have to understand what they are doing, what the goals. And let me back up 1 second, because I don't know that people, I think this is a fairly new term for people, but talk a little bit about the GSV and because I want to lay out what's in. I know that they've got this big summit that's coming up in Salt Lake City, but talk about this GSV and how this is a venture capital.
Oh, yeah.
Venture capitalist group.
Is. Basically, what GSV is a big group of people with a lot of, as my husband would say, they got a lot of money but not a lot of sense.
Right.
And while I say that kind of jokingly, they do have a tremendous amount of sense, and they have a tremendous amount of money. And pretty much their whole goal is to take their money and to invest it in places where they're going to get lots and lots more money. And one of the things they can do is they can disrupt education, and that is what is so dangerous about this particular document that I first wrote about, and then Crystal has picked it back up. And they've been holding these summits every year, and every year you're going to see people like Bill Gates who are there. And they're sitting here talking about, oh, this is the way that we can, change education this way. This is the way we can impact school boards, is we can just cut them out, because after all, we don't need those school board people, because after all, they don't know what they're doing, because after all, they don't have the innovation, and they don't have the smarts, and they don't have the money. I'm going to read you just a tiny, tiny bit from my 2014 article. Okay, this Global Silicon Valley Advisors. This is another micromanaging group, Alice, for your education. So it could be anywhere in your school board. It could be in the people who come along and are a vendor to your school. They are a body of advisors that help education entrepreneurs and growth companies connect. Okay? Now, here is from their website. This is part of their mission statement. A key part of our mission is to reimagine what education is, with a bias towards innovators, entrepreneurs, investors, and others who look at learning differently. Okay, they also partner with Arizona State University. They're also tied in with the Association for Curriculum Development, which Bill Gates backs. They're tied with Jeb Bush's Foundation for Excellence in Education. They also advocate for Teach for America, KIPP, the Center for Education Reform, and other nonprofits. And this is a big backdoor, again, for ESSA, is the nonprofits. You're going to see an increase in them, and they're going to be education-minded, but watch the junk that they are throwing into education, because that's going to, 9 times out of 10, be somehow tied to your technology and your innovation. Silicon Valley is home to Google, Cisco, Apple, Microsoft, and others. So in other words, it's a mega hub for all your digital stuff. Now, they've been going at education reform, Alice, for over 20 years.
Yeah. That's
and
it.
What they want to do, and this was back in 2014, they want to disrupt the $4 trillion global education market. Now, here we are a few years later. I have no idea what that number would be now, but that's who they are. And advanced ed is not directly, let me see here. I'm trying to put the two together for you because you wanted me to talk about advanced ed. Advanced ed rubs elbows with folks in that particular investment group. I know they're tied in with the Whiteboard Advisors. They're tied in with Blackboard, which if you have anyone in higher education or in secondary education, the Blackboard system is used as a portal for the kids and the teachers to sign in to access all kinds of information and take classes and whatnot. But one of the things that you're going to see time and time again with advanced ed as they go through and they come in and pretty much take over how you run your school district or how you run your school for a price that's around $4,000 a pop, is that they are partnering with these charter schools who are using the term tuition free. Now, anytime you see charter school, it's not necessarily going to be that it uses public funds. Sometimes it can use private funds. But how much of the funding is private? Is there any sort of federal money that's coming into that charter school, even though it might be a private one? Because if there is any federal money, it will have to align with this workforce-based education. But what I'm trying to point out here is that our public schools, our Joe Blow, everyday, run-of-the-mill public school is technically also a tuition-free school. So when you see tuition-free stuck in front of a charter school, what does that tell you?
It's a public school.
It's
getting
public school with taxpayer money.
That's exactly, and that's what the ESSA, the Education Savings Account, is a subsidy to access those homeschool kids, to bring them into the system.
Right. Exactly. Now, from Uncommon Schools, and they are a charter management school out of the north, okay? They have one of the best definitions for how charter schools are funded, and this is going to be something that I'm going to read to you as well. As public schools, charter schools are tuition-free. They are funded according to the enrollment levels and receive public funds on a per-pupil basis.
That's it.
Yep.
That's your personalized learning. That's money following the child.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's going to be another way for them to assimilate into home education. I brought it up earlier in the call about the way that North Carolina is attracting some is through their virtual public school. Now, here's the kicker about that. Yeah, you can go, and it was sold as a free thing, okay? Now, what makes better sense to a home educator than, okay, I could get this quality thing for free, until you read the fine print. And some of the course loads, Alice, that you paid for with this free public school, when it first came out, was anywhere between $400 to $900. Now they've readjusted the prices now, but why, if it's a free service, am I having to pay that much money? I mean, good gravy. Most of your homeschoolers are on one income, and you're talking that big of a fee. They might not can do it. But here's the other thing. It says that they are accredited through the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Okay, well, that makes sense as a virtual public school, but yet I'm out here actively recruiting homeschoolers, and they're lining up for it. So somewhere there's been a disconnect over at what point do I keep my homeschool free of the government say so. Now, they don't give diplomas, so this particular virtual public school does not give a diploma. Yes, it's accredited, but no, it doesn't have a diploma. You're going to start seeing, as we've already started to see in some states, diplomas are now becoming either totally reconfigured into certificates or credentials, or you have some states where if you are homeschooling, you have to get a diploma from somewhere else because it can't possibly come from mom and dad because it won't be anything. So do you see the dangers that we're coming into from all educational choices? And it's all tied back in some way to this stupid innovation. But the virtual public school selling point for homeschoolers is this. They want to produce modern learners. The North Carolina Virtual Public School selling point is also carrying out our State Board Education's goal, and that is to produce modern learners for the 21st century. Now, every time we hear that, whether we homeschool or we charter school or we public school or we whatever school, every time we hear a phrase like that, it should be a bell in our head for, okay, innovation, because that's exactly what it is. Producing modern learners for the 21st century. Do you think back in the ages when people were being educated that they went around, we're going to produce modern learners for the whatever century? No. No. They didn't want to produce anything. They wanted to help educate and help elevate those people who were going through those educational systems.
Let me ask you a crazy question.
Okay, we can go nuts.
Yeah. What happens to that mom and dad who want their children to have a education, and I don't even want to call it classical, because that even that term has been taken over, by all these charter schools. Oh, we're doing a classical education.
Classical education, yes.
Mm-hmm. What happens to that parent that wants their child to learn to read phonetically, to learn to read well, learn to write well, learn to do math, actually read books, sit on the couch and read a book? Is that even possible today?
And I understand where you're going. And it absolutely is possible. I haven't, let's see, this is 2017. Okay, I have not taught in 2 years, okay? Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that if someone knocked on my door tomorrow and told me, or asked me to help them to teach their child, I would do it. But here's what I would caution. Do everything you can to educate your child in the freedom in which you wish to educate your child, especially if you're homeschooling, until A, you die, or B, someone comes and knocks on your door and tells you you can't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. And that's really...
I know it's very simple, Alice, but that's what it really boils down to, okay? That's exactly what it boils down to, because we all make choices every single day. There's been a lot of money and time and energy invested in the dumbing down of each generation, that you've got to be in some sort of system to conform to get ahead in life. And we're seeing it play out in education.
Let me ask you another crazy question. When in state after state we have these great moms and dads who are going down and they're looking at legislation, they're fighting, against the school choice education savings accounts that are, in this battle, and they see in state after state after state the machine churning. If you were walking into a state senator's office or a state representative, how would you explain to them the system and caution them about what is happening? If you had, 5 minutes with a legislator, what I'm trying to get at is we have all these people that are trying to write legislation or submit legislation to stop a little piece of this or to fix it.
Right.
Is that even possible?
Yeah, I think that it can still happen, but we're fighting with them 2 steps ahead of us, and here's how they're 2 steps ahead of us. There is a tremendous amount of money, Alice, and a tremendous amount of time that goes into these think tanks that are placed around the nation who groom lobbyists. And they can afford to send these lobbyists ahead of the citizens, okay? That's their job. Meanwhile, Joe and Mary Citizen over here have to not only raise the kids, but they also have to pay the bills, which means they have to work, which means they can't get to their state legislators near as much as the lobbyists. Now, in my way of thinking, and I don't know if this could even be done, but if we're going to start talking term limits for career politicians, we need to be finding some way to silence the lobbyists, because they're drowning out the citizens' voice. And this is where the big disconnect is in this nation, as far as I can see, especially with education. When you have people who have got the agenda and the bucks to drive that agenda, like Bill Gates and all these other folks, they beat a pathway to not only the federal legislators, but to the state ones. So who's in bed with whom on your state level, okay? If you can get the lobbyists out. The only other thing I can say is, yeah, you got 5 minutes. Use it to the best of your ability. Do not go in and try to recite, 10 years worth of Common Core history. They will not listen. What you can do is make it personal. This is how my family's being impacted by this education junk, and you're my representative or you're my senator, and what are you going to do about it? And would you have your kid go through the same thing mine is going through? So have some real examples, okay? That gets their attention. What also gets their attention is respect. If you go in cussing and fussing and raising a storm, they will absolutely not listen to you. Okay? You have to be respectful. You may not like them. You may not even have voted for them, but they are the ones who have been elected for your congressional district. Okay? Be respectful. Be personal. Have evidence. Have it in bullet points. Have it one sheet. Okay? These people have an incredibly short amount of attention they can devote to every single issue that they have to devote their time to. Their gatekeeper will be the one who 9 times out of 10 answers the phone. They're going to be the administrative assistant. You get in nice with the administrative assistant, it will be amazing how easily you can get information to your representative or to your senator. So again, that's where that respect comes in. That's where that bullet point list comes in, okay? Also, be persistent. If you can't be in your state capital banging their door down over this particular issue, you email them once a day. Or you phone call them once a day. Hey, Senator so-and-so or Representative so-and-so, this is Lynne Taylor, and I'm calling you back about you know what, and here's my beef of the day. Right. They don't have to like that you call every day, but you are being that persistent widow. And if you remember, or if you've never heard the Bible story, there's a widow. She wanted something, and she pestered the bejeebers out of this one man who could give it to her, and he finally said, you know what? Have it, because you have worn me down, and that's what we have to do.
I think you're right. Now let's take it from the state level down to that mom or dad that is running for school board and is in the in the wolf den. How, when you're that supposed to be the team of 8, 7 elected school board members and a superintendent, and you know what's happening, and you see the machine at work at the school board level, how do we fight this battle at that local level? I have one, and I want to ask you about this. One of the things that Dr. Luxick said when they were fighting this battle back in the 80s and 90s is she said that they would get people on the school board, and kind of like in Supreme Court rulings, they would write dissenting reports. So
Absolutely.
Instead of voting as that team of 8, you vote against it, and then you write a dissenting report.
Right. I think.
So, what are your thoughts about that?
I think that's an excellent idea, but here's one thing that we need to understand. While we're seeing this machine work at so many different levels, we have a tremendous amount of activity, if you will, going on at the local school board level. I've been to meetings where I've seen the county point the finger at the state points the finger back to the county, and, it's that blame game all over again. It's like you're 5 years old, and, well, no, she did it, no, he did it. You can't get anywhere with that. So what you're going to have to do, absolutely, Run for office if you feel it is something you absolutely have to do. But before you run for office, do your homework. As my dad called it, make a paper trail. Know what your state says in its legislation about your responsibilities and your duties. Ask yourself the tough question. Of all these duties and all these responsibilities, and knowing what I know about this Common Core machine junk rolling through my school board, can I do this? Do I want to do this? Is God leading me to do this? And if you answer yes to all those, then run. Get yourself elected. Be that positive voice, but choose your battles. You're not going to win every single battle issue that we have about Common Core, but if you can get the big ones, then that will give someone else an opportunity to say, hey, so-and-so and such is being very consistent, has done their homework, here's the documentation, and you start slowly having that influence to where you may not get everybody on the school board to see what you see, but you'll certainly do more than if you just do nothing. You also will be that encouragement for someone else just like you to, hey, I'm going to go join so-and-so on the school board. And now, instead of just being 1 against 7, you got 2 against 6. See where I'm going?
Right.
If they can help you, okay, I'm going to take these particular issues of the Common Core mess, and I'm going to speak up against them, and you take these others, suddenly you've got some more teamwork going. And, there's safety in numbers. 2 heads are better than 1. Yes, these are very simple solutions, but they have worked. What we need to also go in to the local school boards knowing is that if you say no on every single issue, you will be marginalized within seconds, and your voice on that school board suddenly goes from, I can use it, to you better shut up. And you are discounted. That will render you absolutely mute, and that will mean that your presence in the school board is not going to be very effective at all. But
right.
Write those dissents. I would absolutely.
And I think that's a lot of times that the professional development or the training of the school board members through these trade organizations at the state level, like TASB here in Texas, they make you into this position of submission to the superintendent. And I think that you give you make a really good point and give really good advice in saying, know the Texas Education Code or know the education code in your state and know it to be able to use the power that you have. I think so many times we don't realize the power that we have. I had a great meeting down in Austin, and one of the lead counsel for a state senator, he told me, he said, Alice, you've got to understand the power that you have as an individual citizen. And he recommended, don't just go and testify and hand them your testimony or your documentation and think that it is going to get put into the record. He said, actually follow up and go to the office. And I did this last week, and it made me feel good in knowing that it actually got where it needed to go. But he said, I was going to testify against Morath. He said, go to the nominations committee office after you testify and walk in there and hand them a copy of your testimony and all the documentation. Hand it in the office and watch them put it in the record. And I did that, and I actually saw him putting it in the record, putting my name on it. And he said, because then once it's in the record, then you can come back to it. And if you needed to, if there's a parent, and I would say do that at your local school board level. Do that. We need to start following up and holding these people accountable for actually doing the process that they say is in place and legally in place. And that's where writing those dissenting opinions, you do have the right to do that. And you need to be able to justify that. And in order to justify that, you've got to know what the education code is. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you are. And one thing that we need to point out, it is not mandatory for school boards to allow public comment. It is at their choosing. So they don't have to open up the school board meeting and give you 3 minutes or 5 minutes or however many minutes it is. But I will tell you, the more shifting we see in our school boards, the more laborious the process for being able to get up and speak for 3 or 5 minutes has become, because they're trying to make it harder for you to jump through hoops, because first of all, they are relying on the fact that you're a busy person and you don't have time to follow up, so you're just going to do the least amount you can to get by, and that's it. And this is where we have proven time and time again, Alice, by reading that fine print on that legislation or having that key conversation with that person who knows this is how the state government works, gave advice on how you could see that your testimony was actually in a book. That's fabulous. That absolutely is. And don't forget, while you also have the right to publicly dissent, you have the right to peacefully protest. So, you know, you can't make it to Washington to go picket the Department of Education. Fine. Go down to the local school board, peaceably protest the fact that digital innovation is replacing teachers, or, you know, this kind of stuff. Now, I want to point out and say, you don't want to do this every single day. You don't want to do it every week. But, you know, especially now that we're coming into this opt-out season, choose wisely how you wish to protest. But that is a guaranteed right of ours in our Constitution. You have the right to assemble, and you have the right to peacefully protest. We don't like what's going on. We ought to be more protesting in how we show it. And I think that's another thing. We're just so busy. We think, oh, well, Lynn and Alice will do it. They do such a good job. We'll let them do it. But what if Lynn and Alice can't do it? Why not get up and help us do it?
Right. That's exactly right. And I will tell you, it was very interesting, and it is very interesting to watch this nomination of this Commissioner of Education. I think a lot of people don't realize that these people have to actually be confirmed by the Senate. They have to go through the process. And I was told the other day, it is so rare to have citizens actually show up at a nominations committee hearing and testify against an appointed nominee. But we had some key people come and testify and expose the corruption that is going on. And it's interesting when you look at, and I'll kind of tie this in and we'll close up the call, but when you were talking about the sponsors and the ties into the GSV, and one of them being Teach for America, the way that this guy, Mike Morath, has restructured the Texas Education Agency, and he has put in these 5 key deputies. So they've restructured it, and 3 of the 5 are former Teach for America leaders. All 5 are major pro schools of choice and charter school proponents. And one of them, this deputy of governance, who there's all kinds of bad stuff. He actually changed his name to get this job. He came from Missouri. And when you look at his previous name and start doing research, there's a reason why he had to change his name. But what's so interesting is when you start doing the research and you find out that, for instance, when they were restructuring the TEA, of these 5 deputies, somehow they miraculously changed the education requirements of the deputies for this one position, the deputy of governance, where the other 4 positions you had to have a higher education. You had to have at least a college degree. For that one position, deputy of governance, they changed that you don't have to have any higher education. So this guy, the deputy of governance of the Texas Education Agency, his highest attainment of education is a high school diploma. And yet he has the power in this position of deputy of governance to investigate our schools and to rate and hand our schools over to these charter school companies.
Yeah, and that's going to tie back into your ESSA, Alice, because you're going to see an increase. I mean, we're already seeing it now, but you're going to when it's fully implemented, you'll see more non-educators in the education business. And you're exactly right with your example. You're supposed to have this huge, powerful position, and you change the job description. Well, You shouldn't be able to do that. There ought to be some sort of law you've just violated, and maybe when you look into your laws, maybe that would be something you could find. But I wanted to point out a couple of things while we're wrapping up. The dangers with the innovation and the districts and the global Silicon Valley and the advanced ed and the every student succeeds act, it all ties back to the United Nations and their social justice agenda. And we're seeing it pop up through some of the initiatives that people like groups like the global Silicon Valley are involved in. And then know that if you have a leader who has at one point been in the Common Core machine, their roots will start to show somehow, some way at any time during their service. And the reason that I say that is because we've seen it play out time and time again. And here in North Carolina, we have a brand new superintendent of public instruction. Now, he beat out Dr. Atkinson. His name is Mark Johnson. He's new to the job. He's not been on the job very long, and he's already being held, or people are really starting to want to hold him accountable because he ran on a campaign of, I'm going to get rid of Common Core, but now citizens are saying, well, you've been on the job a month or two and you've not done anything. You're not listening to the citizens. But guess where his roots are? Teach for America.
Yep.
You're seeing these groups plant these people. Somehow they get the elections and they win them, and they get their change agents going, and that's how this wheel is greased. So we have to, on the opposing side, we have to keep being consistent no matter what. We have to be in their face. We have to be large in number. We have to be loud in voice and consistent with our message. And the reason I say that is because one of our dear warrior friends out of New York, Michelle Moore, posted this on Facebook today, and she said, hey, did you know there's been this Bill Gates funded study? And I'm like, okay. He has spent tons of money to track Twitter, especially for social media, for those people who are protesting Common Core. Okay? Now, he spent millions of dollars to do this, not once but twice. This is the second study. Now, while he's sitting here lamenting the fact that those of us who tweet have been the demise of we're the reason why Common Core has failed, and that's just an absolute laugh in itself, what it's telling us and what my point is yes, we've been consistent with our message, we've been public with our message, and even Bill Gates is threatened by our message. So that is what we need to leave this call with.
Yes. That's it. We are having impact. And that's that's what's going to save our nation. And we've said it before that these battles have been fought in the past. We think we're in the middle of the worst times ever, but we do have a voice, and we have to use our voice. We have to use the tools that are out there to fight this battle, and I think you're exactly right. Let's close out the call. Do you have any other final words before we close?
I just wanted to say, it harkens back to the thing about keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Mm-hmm.
What?
That's
when
right.
Your enemy calls you out as someone who has been part of what they're saying is, your demise.
Right.
Yeah, you see where I'm going. When your enemy calls you out as being effective, that is such a compliment. That is such a testimony to do what we do every single day, Alice.
That's right. That's exactly right. We are having an impact, and I know that it's happening in state after state after state, that everyday moms and dads and teachers and educators and people who are stepping up and saying, no, this is not right. This is not right, and our kids deserve better, and they deserve a true education, not this new vision. So let me close us out in prayer. Lord, we again just thank you for this incredible work and the gifts that you've given us in Lynne's work and the steadfastness and the ability that you have given her to really dive in deep and to uncover all of this. Lord, we just thank you for her, and we thank you for that gift. Lord, we ask you to be with us, to be with our elected officials, to be with those people who are in positions of power. Give them the knowledge, give them the discernment, and give them the courage to take a stand, because our children, our states, and our country deserve to have freedom and liberty. And Lord, we just ask you to continue to bless us and continue to be with us so that we can do your will and protect our children. And we ask this in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you so much, Lynne, and we will be back next week, same time, same place. Have a great week.
Thanks, Alice.
Bye-bye.